Services home located at 26238 Ryan Road, Warren, Michigan. Mr. Joliff is 63 years old. He was born October 21, 1947. Mr. Joliff resides at 4996 Southview, Shelby, Michigan. My name is Dave Brousseau, and I'll be the interviewer, and Ann Barley will be the videographer. Mr. Joliff, will you state for the record the branch of service that you serve?
United States Army.
Now, you were in the Vietnam War. 2 years. Was that the normal?
No, I was there 1 year. 1 year. Tour of duty. I did a year stateside, then I was shipped over.
Okay,
there.
but that was your enlistment, was?
I was drafted, yeah. You do 2 years and
Okay.
you survive.
Let's go back to maybe high school, where we can start taking a little bit of census of where you were and where you came from, your family. Can you give us a little background about that?
Well, I was raised in Utica. I went to Utica High, graduated in '65, started Macomb College, and got drafted.
Were you anticipating this?
Yeah, probably most of the guys I knew were either joining or were getting drafted.
How did you feel about that?
I really didn't think about it much. I mean, I thought I was in college. I thought I was going to be, passed over, but that wasn't the case.
Oh, I didn't pick up on that. You were in college and you actually got drafted.
Yeah.
What was the deferment rules then that are different?
My grades were not what they should have been. I was on a probationary status.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of my friends were, getting deferments for all kinds of reasons, including physical or married with kids and things like that.
Utica, what year we're talking about there?
I was drafted in '67. I graduated in
67,
'65.
okay.
So in the meanwhile, I was going to college
Okay.
part-time.
Was the purpose you were in college to stay out of the draft, or was it just because you thought that was
I was
the thing to do?
exploring. I was going to
Okay.
college with no aim. I was just kind of taking elective classes. Didn't really have a plan. It was the thing to do back then. You know what I mean?
Give us a little background on your family at that time.
Well, it's just me and my brother, and my parents were just a normal family, and they figured that they expected me to go to college.
Your older brother, or younger?
No, he's younger than me, so he got lucky. He got in the lottery because after the draft, then there was the lottery, and he had a good number, so he didn't have to go.
How'd your parents feel about it?
My parents were very upset. My mother said if I had been killed over there, she would have went after the president. She was a basket case.
Oh, boy.
And it's rough on the parents.
Oh,
too,
you
know what I mean?
betcha. You
She
betcha.
was a total wreck. My father was a World War II veteran, so he was okay with it. It was something to do.
Well, that's really very, very typical.
But the mothers just fall apart. A
God
couple of my
bless her.
friends had been killed already by then, high school buddies. So she was picturing me maimed or dead.
Can you give me a sense of what was going on in Vietnam at the time?
We didn't know anything. We saw what we saw on the news, and we thought that's what it was. And this is why this book kind of opens up the reality and the carnage and the things that you weren't told on the news.
Because at that time, Vietnam had been going on for quite a while. Matter of fact, it started to really get steamy right around that time, didn't it?
Well, when I went to the Vietnam Wall, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I asked one of those volunteers, those rangers, I says, I'm looking for some friends of mine in 1968. He says, well, start here and then go down about 300 yards. I says, well, you're pointing to more than half the wall. He says, well, the year I was there, 68, was the worst of the, it was the apex. So I looked up all my friends, did the thing with a pencil and the paper, get their
Wow.
name. So there was a lot of names up there in '68.
So you're saying that most of the friends that you didn't go at that time?
Yes and no, there was, you know, the ones
Some.
that could escape managed to get deferments, and the ones that got called, they went, you know. But I don't know anybody that took off and went to Canada, if that's what you're asking.
No, just
I didn't know any slackers.
when um, I graduated from high school 10 years before you, and when that happened, this was Korea, and we had just all gone through World War II. And a lot of the kids that were A1 like me, 1A, were going to college. Some to stay out of the draft, probably more to stay out of the draft, and some just to go to college. And I was primed, so I went to college. So that was the question.
Well, when I first went to college, before I got drafted, I was one of these kind of anti-war kind of, because I was popular in the 60s to be against the war. I wasn't a hippie, but I did go on a couple of demonstrations against the tank plant on Warren there,
Yeah.
on Van Dyke.
That was sort of what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
What was the sense of the vision of the war with folks your age at that time? I know what it was when I was eligible
Well,
for the draft.
it wasn't a popular war, you know, and I was with the college kids, and the college kids were kind of to the left, they're kind of liberal
Yeah.
against the war.
Yeah,
So, I mean, if there was a protest, we would go to the protest, not just to protest, but just to have fun and to be in with the group, because that was the in thing.
yeah,
It was kind of a to-do, kind of hippie, kind of sit-in, kind of a love-in, kind of a, you know, participation thing. And then we'd get tear gas. The National Guard would show up, and then we'd all run away and scramble.
okay, let's go a little further now. Let's pick it up when you're drafted. Obviously, did it ever cross your mind to choose a branch of the service before they got you?
I had a couple of friends that went in the Marine Reserves,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but, you know, the funny haircuts and stuff, that wasn't for me. I mean, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
the white walls on the side, a little bit on the top. I was kind of a long-haired kind of person. I'm not saying hippie, but I'm kind of saying,
Bridgie.
yeah, on the cusp. So basically, I was hoping not to get called, and then I got called. And, you
Okay,
know,
so,
some people volunteered for the draft, not me. You know, I waited.
oh yeah, that's right, there was a
There was
volunteer
three
too.
options. You know,
Yeah,
you
that's
joined,
right.
you volunteered for the draft, or you got drafted. And the fourth option, you went to
Yeah.
Canada. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's not right.
or
That's the
somewhere where you
slackers.
can get lost, right?
Yeah, a lot of people.
Okay.
I don't like that.
Okay, so I'm trying to get your sense of feeling. You're now drafted.
Right.
You're in the Army now.
Yes, sir. It's brutal.
What were the first things that happened to you after you went down there and did the formal signing, and where did you get sent?
You go to Fort Wayne for your physical,
Okay,
and it was cold, and
You're
the
speaking
windows
of
are
Detroit,
open.
Fort
Yeah,
Wayne,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. You're standing there, and you're lined up in your underwear, and they give you a battery of tests, and you're hoping you'll be not selected.
oh, that's right, you still have to go through an evaluation.
Right.
Okay,
Psychological, physical.
what'd you feel about that?
I was hoping I would flunk,
Okay.
you know, but there was nothing wrong with me, so I became 1A, and they called me within a couple of months, and then I reported someplace on Gratiot by 11 Mile Road, and they got on a bus, and they took us to the railroad station at Grand Central. Then they shipped us to Fort Leonard Woods.
Okay, I'm familiar with that. Oh, what a nice place to go.
Little Korea, we
Yes,
called it.
exactly.
It was a horrible
Yeah.
place. It was winter time. It was the worst of times. It was
Haven't
the
ever
worst of
heard
times.
anybody say anything nice about
Nothing good. It's just like we did the low crawl on gravel and rocks in the winter, and the wind blowing on top of those hills. And at night we had to sleep with the windows open because the guy in the platoon had meningitis. So we had one green wool blanket, and we shivered all night. And I have some stories in the book about what basic is like if you mess up, what they do to you. It's just one step beyond torture.
Yeah, yeah. Now, basic is 8 weeks.
8 weeks of hell. But they do mold you, though. You come out of there with a whole different attitude.
Well, that's the purpose.
That's a wonderful purpose. I needed that. I needed structure.
Youngsters
Yeah.
talk about the pain, but the
It's
philosophy
wonderful.
behind it is to
It's-
completely level you so that you can start in a new mold.
You speak
It's to
as-
make you brand
Yeah.
new.
That's right.
And even in the shorter versions, you find yourself in a real new,
Well, you become a cohesive, lean green fighting machine
for sure.
instead of, 30.
And you really don't have skills to speak of at that point. You still have to go on to school. So
Advanced individual training.
tell me about that 8 weeks beyond
After the
the
basic.
pain. Were there any individuals that stuck out in your mind?
Yeah, they're in the book. They're in the book. We had a guy that was just an oddball. I mean, he wasn't going to fit no matter what. He was told to do things. He would say, "Give me a break. I'm from Brooklyn," and we didn't understand that. When you go to basic, you're not just with the guys that are from Detroit. You're like, there's guys from all across the United States. All different colors, all different backgrounds. This guy kept saying, "I'm from Brooklyn. I'm not gonna do squat for you guys." And then one day we just didn't see him around anymore. He just disappeared during the night.
Did you ever find out what happened to him?
Nobody knows, it kind of, that's how you stay, you're gonna toe the line because you know what.
Well, he may have gotten a dishonorable discharge.
Well,
and
he disappeared.
gotten rid of him.
He could have got anything.
Yeah.
He just vanished. And there's all kinds of different people in there, and it makes it fun. And at the end, it's like even guys from like a whole different background, they're your brothers. You know what I mean?
Most will get a new religion there, but there'll be that few that just aren't gonna budge, so they just move them on.
Yeah, but then you're a unit.
Yeah. Any particular names of?
Yeah, there was one guy, and I saw him a few years ago. He's a local guy. He had a really long Polish name. His name tag started here and went underneath his arm. I mean, I don't want to say his name, but it had a lot of consonants.
Yeah.
And it's Polish name, so it ended over here. Our Puerto Rican drill sergeant wasn't even going to attempt to say his name. You know what I mean? He just looked at his name. He called him Alphabet the whole time.
Alphabet.
Hey, Alphabet.
Yeah.
They didn't even try. And some of the names they called us was like horrific names.
Mhm.
Maggot pukes and
Yeah,
all these
oh yeah.
things. My girls
Anything that
are
will get
slow.
you off the standard and get you
Yeah,
down here.
your name doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You're either a number
Neither
or some
do you.
name he made up. And a lot of the people there, the staff, didn't speak English real well. I mean, we had all different kind of background
Really?
drill instructors, and they weren't gonna make an attempt. You 3 guys, half of yous come with me. Second they squad, it's standing fast. And we're going, what's he talking about? But you gotta move, you gotta do what you think they want.
Any DIs stand out as,
They're in the book. One guy says, he would tell us to jump, and then when you came down, he says, "I didn't tell you to come down. You guys don't know whether to shit or go blind." And we're going, the analogies just didn't, There was a lot of very unusual people there, and that's this wonderful thing, because it makes the book kind of real, because you can't make this stuff up.
yeah, right.
It's beyond something.
Well, as I said earlier, when you talk to the people that we've talked to,
Mhm.
you can't make up what they said, and you can't make up the emotion that almost all of them have shown.
Mhm.
Some worse than others.
Mhm.
That kind of stuff you don't make up.
Mhm.
And the surprising thing is, the people who came with them or brought them never heard that story, never heard anything.
That's
So
true.
he's never shared that.
That's true. I've been reading the book to some of my friends, and they're just like flabbergasted.
Yeah,
Because I never told the stories. And then they read it, and it's like the first time
yeah.
they didn't know what I went through.
Okay. Any other DI that might strike you as worthy of interest, or?
They're all very professional, and they all have their own ways of doing things, and a lot of funny things happen. It's hard to single out any particular person. I mean, my drill instructor, in the book, I said, he took 30 individuals and he turned them into one machine. So, and those 30 guys are men, the guys I would die for, and vice versa.
Well, I've been doing this for probably 5 years or better, and I have never had as much time as you have given us on the basic activities and reflections that you've given me right now.
Every day was a different story, and every day was
Yeah.
a learning experience.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful experience, but it's brutal at the same time.
I used to say, I'm glad I did it, but I never want to do it again.
I want my kid to go through it because he has no direction. He's 20 years old, and he drinks and smokes too much, he can't find a job. And I tell him the military is what you need. You need structure, you need discipline, you need a vision, a goal, something to shoot for. I didn't have that when I was 20. I was a little scattered, going to college, but not really having a plan.
Well, I think you fit into the mold of most kids that
There
come
you
out
go.
of-
Some countries have it's mandatory that you do the military. My people are from France, and over there everybody does 18 months. Everybody, rich or poor, you do 18 months in the military. And that makes citizens out of people.
Okay, you're now a brand new person.
I think so.
Uh,
When I came home,
They gave you
saw
some time
different-
off to,
No, they sent me right to Fort Sam Houston for my advanced individual
so
training.
you never even got time
After,
to go home.
some people go home after basic,
Mhm.
and some people are shipped, depending on what they need.
What
They ship you.
determined where you were gonna go?
They give you tests, and if you do well on the test, they give you a nice job. If you don't do well, they give you infantry job, cannon fodder. And the rules are kind of like arbitrary. I have some friends that would say, what'd you do in civilian life? In civilian life, when I was going to college, I was also a surveyor. I worked for the Michigan Highway Department, with the scope and the rod and making out the road. So some people say, what'd you do? I was a surveyor. Okay, you're going to be a cook. What'd you do? I was a cook. Okay, you're going to be a clerk. I tell a story in the book about this friend of mine stuttered. They said, what'd you do? He said, well, okay, you'll be a machine gunner. So it could be anything. And the book is very funny because all these individuals get pigeonholed. I did well on the test, and I think that's why they made me a medic, because they spent a lot of money on me.
What kind of tests were they? Could you,
Everything, what does this remind you of? What would you do with this? Analogies,
Okay.
facsimiles, things, just standardized psychological,
psychological testing to just see
And-
where you're,
and how much education you have and things like that. So I was offered, during basic training, I had a wonderful opportunity and I turned it down. They said, you scored high, you can go to OCS, Officer Candidate School. So I'm thinking, this is great, I won't have to put up with this, latrine duty, guard duty, kitchen police. I'll be telling these people what to do, I like that. But then I said, what's the catch? And they weren't upfront with me. They didn't come out and tell me. I had to kind of investigate. And the catch was, you got to sign up for another year. So instead of a 2-year draftee, I was now a 3-year. And I was already homesick, and I didn't want to be there. So I turned it down. Now, in hindsight, I'm thinking, man, what a great life I could have had.
probably.
What a great life. I
Your
would have done
focus was
20
different,
years.
though.
I could have been a 20-year, I would have got out as a colonel or a major at least. But at the time, you're young, you can't see,
Yeah.
3 years seems like a really long time when you're, 19 years old. So I turned it down, and that was a mistake.
Well, you didn't turn out so bad, so maybe not.
I got lucky. Knock on wood.
I think we all have a little bit of that. Some of us call it being blessed, others call it lucky, but
But they offer you so much. I mean, if you take it, when you're sitting in front of...
particular in wartime, because they need,
Yeah.
they have a vision of who they need,
Mhm.
and they're trying to fit people in there.
So I can't complain.
And anybody else is a cook
Yeah,
or,
yeah. They spent a lot of
Okay.
money on me. They sent me to Fort Sam Houston for my
but it
medical
takes you a
training.
while to figure that out. and
Yeah.
The decision is long gone by then.
20 years later, you realize, oh my goodness, my life would have been so different.
So, how did they send you? By rail?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
trained then,
Yeah.
yeah. So then,
So I guess trains were still the in thing back then, eh?
yep,
They certainly were when I was there, so
yeah, so I went down
airplanes probably
to
didn't
San
come
Antonio,
until.
Texas, yep.
Okay, what are you gonna do down there?
Well, here's the thing. I went in the service, I think it was January, so now it's like 8 weeks later, it's now like late February, April, you know? No, March, it's March, and I'm thinking, man, it's gonna be cold, cause I'm leaving Little Korea, you know, Fort Leonard Woods. Then I go down to Fort Sam, which, you know, down in San Antonio, and it's gorgeous.
Sure.
It's like springtime, people are golfing, there's swimming pools there, and it's an open base. You can go right into, you know, get on the bus, on the base, and you get off the bus, you're in San Antonio. You know, no MPs bother you, you're in and out. I'm sure it's not like that now because of the Patriot Act, but back then you could go in and out, you know, in civilian gear if you wanted to. So I was thrilled, wonderful.
So what are you gonna do there?
Well, they put me through medical training. You know, we did a lot of medical stuff. They trained us to be, you know, surgeons in the field, a medic, yeah. Which we
not
did.
a nurse,
No,
a medic,
a medic, yeah.
typical.
Combat medic,
All right, so you're really talking about
emergency procedures.
pieces of a nurse, pieces of a doctor, pieces of a lot of
Everything.
things.
We do everything till they get on the medevac chopper.
Okay.
So we'll put the guy's head back on, or we'll just put a bandage on him.
And probably a little bit of how to recognize the difference.
Triage, yeah. Who
Okay.
goes on the chopper first?
How long is that?
That's, I think, 10 weeks.
And when you get done with that, what are you?
Then I didn't go to Vietnam. They sent me home for, I think, a 30-day leave, because I hadn't had a leave. Maybe it was 2 weeks.
All right, let's go back and tell me a little bit about your medic training. Anything you remember that?
Yeah, we had to
Like
give
yourself?
shots. The shots were like unbelievable, because you would sit at a table about this size and have like maybe 30, 40 people in this lecture hall, have a doctor telling you the procedures, and then you and the guy sitting next to you were gonna practice what you were taught. So there was a lot of times where we used the syringes, but there was a lot of times we used the air guns too. And if you flinch with the air gun, you're cut. You know what I mean? Because, you know, it's a line, it's an assembly line. So we would come out of the classes like with, you know, cotton on both our arms, just blood, if you moved. It was just, you know, we'd come out of class. We had to practice on grapefruits and oranges and, you know, different kinds of intravenous and intradermal, all these shots, bandages, different carries, different kinds of wounds, triage, all kinds of stuff. So
How long are these classes? 9 to 5?
there was days where we were like doing practice, and there's days where we're in the classroom. You know, there's days where we just learn how to carry a litter, how to put a body on the litter, how to, you know, provide, they taught us frostbite, and then they sent us to Vietnam. How to prevent frostbite, because they're always teaching the last war, so they're teaching us what they learned in Korea, but they're sending us
Plus,
to
they
the
don't
tropics.
really know where you're gonna go.
Well, they know we weren't going to Korea.
Some
that's-
people went to Germany.
Yeah. But anyway, I learned a lot, and the classes were very long, and sometimes you're in a warm class, you haven't slept all night because you're doing guard duty, and you're dead tired in class because it goes on forever. And if they catch you asleep, you're not the guy in trouble. The guy that's sitting next to you is the guy in trouble because he let you fall asleep. It was called the buddy system. If the guy next to you is asleep, you're the one getting chewed out because you're supposed to elbow the guy. It was always the buddy system.
It's a whole new system.
And they would say, if your buddy screws up, you're all on restriction. You will lose your liberty. The buddy system, you lose your liberty for the weekend. So I would be in the back of the room mumbling, give me liberty or give me death. And the guy would say, who said that? And I would say, Patrick Henry. He'd go, Patrick Henry, you're on report. You know what I mean? These people sometimes were not very well educated in history. So everything is in the book. 365 on the Wake Up. It's a funny page turner on how to kill communists. You know, you have to have a sense of humor.
So you're kind of back to civilian life in a way, in Army uniforms. I mean, you're going
Yes.
there in the morning, go to work, come back.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, it's just like school for doctors.
yeah, well,
And we're seeing some movies that are absolutely gross. I mean, you know, sucking chest wounds and belly wounds and you know, horrible.
I'm sure you gotta go through that to see
And-
whether
and-
you can even stomach it, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. But they're showing us a lot of stuff from Korea, you know, frostbite. And we're thinking,
You're
wow.
right, you're right.
And then there's days where you don't even go in the classroom. There's days where you're driving an ambulance and you're learning how to set up an emergency medevac. You know, how to call in choppers and how to pop a smoke grenade and how to get the bodies from the Jeep into the, you know, a lot of different things.
I'm curious if there's anything that you can tell us about your background that might have made them select you for this.
I think the test,
Medic.
maybe I scored high on the test because I had some college.
But what would you have had in college that might?
I just think that the IQ test and all the things that you did, if you score high enough, they figure we could spend some money on this guy,
Okay.
you know?
I'm sure that's constantly going on from the
Well,
time you get in.
I've taken batteries and batteries
Yeah.
of tests. So, I don't know the reasons. You
Yeah.
don't ask questions. They tell you,
Well, that's another thing.
they said if we wanted you to think, we would have made you an officer. You know? So,
Gosh.
they offered me that and I turned it down, so maybe I'm kind
I
of like
remember
not
that.
officer material.
Okay, 10 weeks, tell us about going home.
Then I got my leave. So they sent me home. While I was home, my parents were glad to see me, and they said, well, you know what? You're probably gonna be going to Vietnam. I hadn't had my orders for Vietnam,
Yeah.
but you're probably gonna go to Vietnam, so let's go to France. I went to France for a vacation to see some of my relatives over there. My parents, my mom, figured you may not see these people again. They may not, you know, you may disappear. So I went over there. While I'm in France, all my relatives over there says, you know what? You got dual citizenship. You're half French because of your mother, and you're half, you know, we could keep you over here. You don't have to go back. We'll just dual citizenship can now become single, you know? And I'm thinking, no, that's a slacker. You're telling me that the draft dodger.
Mhm.
And by then, because of basic training, I was already red, white, and blue.
Wow.
They had programmed me into not a killing machine, but a patriot.
Mhm.
You know, I just, there was slackers and then there was me. I wasn't like that before the basic. I was probably a little bit more liberal, a little bit more on the left. But they mold you, so I said, no, I don't even want to hear that. I'm going back over there and whatever my orders come in, that's what I'm gonna do. So when I got home, I got my orders and I went to go to Fort Sam Houston in Massachusetts as an orderly in a hospital ward. So that's what we did.
So you go back to Fort Sam Houston, but this one
No,
is
no.
in,
No, then I go to Fort Devens, Massachusetts. After my leave, I leave
Fort
Fort
what?
Sam Houston, Fort Devens,
Never heard that one.
Devens. Well, it's outside this little dinky town in the
okay,
boonies, and I spent about 8 months there. So now I had a year. I'd done a year of duty, and I'm thinking I'm gonna escape Vietnam. But I was not very well liked by my commanding officer.
Hmm.
You know, so
why do you think that?
I got in a little bit of trouble. I was, you know, had a little bit of an attitude, you know, made some comments under
Still.
my breath. Just to, you know, in fun. I
Yeah.
was not a really bad person.
No,
You know, I mean, I didn't get any, you know, Article 15 kind of trouble. But you know, I was kind of dragging my feet a little bit. I wasn't, you know, hop all the time. So he gets a list. He says, we need 10 people for Vietnam. So he's starting to get rid of all his dead weight, and I'm number 9 or number 10 on the list. So he says, Joliff, you're going to Vietnam. The next day, he gets another list. We need 10 more people. Because, you know, they always take from the rear echelon. The next list is for Germany. And I'm thinking, wow, that's great duty. If I would have been number 11, I would have been on the Germany list. But I think I was number 9 or 10 on the Vietnam list. So that was, I wish I'd been just a little nicer to the commanding officer. So it's random.
a lot of lessons that we're learning here as we go along, eh?
But you don't see him at the time.
No,
You know, in hindsight,
No.
you says, I screwed up. You know, at the time, you're just being a regular GI. You're just doing whatever you can to escape whatever You know what I mean? You do things, but you
But
do
all
it
along,
slowly.
you're telling us about these options that you had in front of you, and now you can reflect on those options.
If you keep your nose clean and you're willing to do whatever you're told, you'll rise up the ranks real
That's
quick.
the game.
But if you're kind of dragging your feet,
That's the
you're,
game.
yeah,
You're not playing in system.
exactly. Oh yeah, I learned that. The system just rolls right over you like a steamroller.
Okay,
So
now,
then I get another leave. See, they're saying you're going to Vietnam, so now I think I get 2 weeks. They ship me home, and you go home. You know, you get this standby, you get this money, and you can use the money whichever way you want. I decide to hitchhike home from Fort Devens, Massachusetts. So I'm wearing my green uniform. You know, they make you wear your dress greens. You can't go home in fatigues because they assume you're going to go to the airport, and you have to look nice. They make, you know, but I'm thinking the airport's gonna cost me a lot of money, even on standby. And standby, you don't know if you're gonna get on the plane or not, right? It could take a couple days. So I decide I'm gonna hitchhike. And so I'm standing on the on-ramp, getting on Route 80, going through like Pennsylvania, Ohio, coming home to Detroit. I'm walking down to the on-ramp, and this is like Boston, right? So I'm coming down the on-ramp, wearing my greens, carrying my duffel bag. At the bottom of the ramp, there's 3 sailors in their dress blues. And I'm thinking, I'm gonna get my ass beat. Because, you know, sailors and soldiers, and Boston is a Navy town. Whenever you go into a bar, you're gonna get beat up. Because you're outnumbered, it's mostly sailors there. So I'm walking down the on-ramp, carrying my duffel bag. These 3 guys have been hitchhiking, trying to get a ride. I walk past them, and I'm standing there for about 1 minute with my thumb out. I'm about 100 yards from them. A big semi comes, hitting the brakes. He goes past the 3 sailors, still hitting the brakes. He's not quite stopped, but he flings his door open and he says, hop in. Well, the 3 sailors claim they want that ride because they've been standing there longer than me. And the guy hit the brakes when he passed them. So they're running for the thing. I'm trying to hop on the running board, grabbing on this chrome handrail, carrying my duffel bag, and the 3 sailors are about to grab me and throw me off their ride, and the guy's yelling, hop in, hop in. I don't like goddamn sailors. You know, I was in the Army, get in. So we rode all night, and he bought me dinner and breakfast and the whole works because he had somebody to talk to. You know, so that was kind of nice. When I was in uniform during the wartime, you get rides, like you're there never more than 2 minutes, and people pick you up. You know, and they give you cigarettes too. Because when they drop you off, they say, well, you got cigarettes? Or you got everything you need? I'd say, no. They go, here, take my, you know. It was incredible. I never needed to fly anywhere back then. It was wonderful. You put your uniform, and everything was comp. So there was an upside to being on the service. You know, they knew that you're going to do the ultimate sacrifice. Most people appreciate that. Yeah, if I see a soldier in uniform even today, I'm going to pull over and give him a ride. I make sure he's a soldier, though. I mean, you could tell by the haircut and what he's wearing. But I wouldn't pick up a regular person. You can't nowadays, you know what I mean?
well,
There was a lot of times if I'm sitting in a bar in a restaurant and the bill comes, I go to reach for my wallet, and people would put their arm on my hand. You know, your money's no good here, soldier. They would pick up the tab. It was a whole different ideology back then.
how'd you feel about that?
I loved it. And I would do the same for a soldier nowadays. You know, if you've been in the service, you know how it is. You see a young guy and, you know, he's a little bit lost, a little confused. Your heart goes out to him. You know, you gotta treat the soldiers right.
I never had to hitchhike, but
Yeah.
every foreign country I was in,
Yeah.
people would just come out of the woodwork.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, to the point where it was scary. You didn't
Yeah.
know what are they doing, what are they
Yeah.
asking,
Yeah.
and it's a family
Yeah.
or
Well, when I was in airports in my uniform, I always felt, you know, people are looking at me and you stand
Yeah.
a little taller,
yeah.
you're a little more proud,
hmm
and it's a nice thing.
So how was Mom this time?
Well, now I got my orders for Vietnam. See, I come home from Fort Devens. She knows where I'm going. She says, well, she says, you still got the options. You can go to Canada or you can go back to France. And I'm red, white, and blue by now, you know. It's not that I want to go, but I'm compelled to go, and there's no way that I cannot not go. Plus, they're going to send me to San Francisco to get on my plane. I get, my orders are to report to some base in San Francisco. I've never been to California. So I get on the plane, I'm flying to California, I'm in my uniform, I meet people. They offered to show me the town for a day or two, but then I gotta report the next morning, so there's no way I can do anything. So I just go right to the base, and the next day I'm on a plane going to Vietnam.
Where did you go?
When I went to Vietnam, they send you to this huge place called, I think, Dong Tam, which is like, it's almost like Selfridge. I mean, it's humongous. It's just bunkers and just like a city. It's as big as Selfridge, I'm thinking.
A training facility?
Well, this is where they parcel you out and they figure what unit you're gonna
This
go to.
apartment from there?
So, yeah, it's like their gigantic headquarters.
Yeah.
And, you know, so many names come, they need so many people for 9th Infantry, for 101st Airborne. So it's almost kind of like, oh, this guy's a medic and they just lost a medic, ship him over here. This guy's a cook, they need a cook. You know what I mean? So Dong Tam was you're safe there. You know, nobody's gonna attack Selfridge.
Something has just come to mind. Did you make any lasting friendships at any of these stops?
I did, but you know what? It's so sad that I didn't keep in touch.
Yeah.
I did. I mean, you know, you're like closer than brothers.
Yeah.
You know, you sleep next to the guy for 8 months and you party with him, you eat with him, you shower with him. You do everything, you know, they're your brothers. And they would do anything and vice versa. It doesn't matter what color you are, you know.
Well, you're talking about your life now. That's a different premise.
It's sad that I didn't keep in touch, you
Yeah.
know. You know, it's kind of hard when you're in the infantry to keep any kind of paperwork. When I was shipped in Vietnam, they said, well, you have pictures? The guy that published the book wanted pictures. I said, you know, every picture I took, things to keep dry, you would put, your helmet had a rubber band that kept your camouflage cover on, big thing, and you would put everything you wanted to keep dry. If you had books, bandages, pictures, you kept them inside your helmet with the strap on, but you know, monsoon, humidity, crossing rivers, everything gets wet and everything just becomes like a blob of gelatin. So I don't have any pictures or addresses or anything that, we didn't have a place to store things like addresses, pictures, letters, things like that. We're always moving, and basically you had your backpack and that was it. That's everything you owned.
So you get shipped from this major
Dong Tam, yeah.
debarkation.
Yeah, they send you to this, what they call this mini war camp. It's a 3-day thing where they wake you up in the middle of the night and they tell you to put grease paint on and you're going on a night operation in a reported heavily infested Viet Cong stronghold. So this is the first time, you've had all this exposure to fake combat, you know, with the empty machine guns firing over your head and you crawling underneath the wire. That's called the confidence course. And the grenade pits with the concussion grenades, but it's all fake. Now they're sending you into the boonies in the middle of the night, all greased up with combat gear on. But what they don't tell you is that the area is a safe area. But they don't tell you that. They're thinking you're really on a search and destroy mission. But that's part of the training, see? So you're walking at night super quiet. You got your weapon on safety because that's the way you were trained. You know what I mean? And you're marching through the jungle and stuff like that. And that's 3 days of stuff like that. Crawling through wires, they tell you look to your left, look to your right. 6 months from now, those guys won't be there. There's only 2 kinds of people in Vietnam, the quick and the dead. Which are you? They want you to kind of really, this is for real now. No more fun and games. You guys are either dead or you're going to survive. And if you don't listen, you're going to be in the body bag. They show you the body bags. And you've seen bodies going, shipping in and out, you know it's for real now. So then after this 3-day mini ward camp, then they send you to your unit. And that's when the book really starts. The first 2-3 chapters are gearing up to it. But 99% of this book is what happens once you get into combat.
So where did you go from this 3-day?
Then they sent me to my unit, and my unit was the one in the movie Forrest Gump, the 9th Infantry. As soon as I saw the movie, I'm looking at the movie, and I see the patch right here, the octafoil, the old reliable. And I goes, that's my unit. And that was incredible because that movie was so real to me. I mean, I did what Forrest Gump did, running in there, getting the bodies one after the next, and coming out of there with bombs and, fires and tracer rounds and napalm. That's what I did as a combat medic. I did it for 1 year. He just does it for a little while till he gets shot in the buttocks. So it was nice seeing that. I mean, I saw a lot of Vietnam movies, but I never saw one about my unit. And what Lieutenant Dan says, your number one job here is to take care of your feet. Boy, that's from a guy that was there.
Yeah.
The infantry soldier. Napoleon says an army marches on its belly. Yeah, he fed his troops good. That's why they were, loyal to him. But an infantry unit takes care of their feet. And there was times where we're out there in the boonies and we're out of food, we're out of ammo, we're out of everything, but a helicopter would come in and supply us with clean socks, dry socks.
Yeah, that kind of...
Because we would take our boots off. If you're in the rice paddies 24 hours a day, you take your boots off, you take your socks off, the skin's coming off. It's kind of like when you sit in the bathtub too long, your skin gets pruny.
Yeah.
Well, if you're like walking on this, then the skin comes off. So dry socks were heaven. It's a gift from heaven. As soon as we stopped, our shoes and our boots and socks came off, and we would just lay in the sun, try not to get athlete's foot and virgin foot, and keep our feet clean and dry and stuff like that. And eventually, we get our feet all messed up.
Yeah.
And jungle rot and the ringworm and all this stuff from being wet all the time and humidity.
So how long did this go on?
Well, I spent a year over there. I spent a year till I got my
1 year.
Yeah, my wake up. 365 and a wake up. That's the name of the book. The wake up means your flight home. So the trick over there is to last 365. The tour of duty was a year. It wasn't like World War II where you're in for the duration. As a draftee, they're supposed to keep you for 2 years and then you go home. Well, there's a weird ending in the book about why I'm in there more than 2 years. Again, my attitude. They kept me a couple, 2-3 days extra just to punish me. And I kept telling them, I'm a civilian now, you can't tell me what to do. That's what they didn't want to hear. So they kept me out there and they said, we're going to keep you out in the field, where you can get killed because of your attitude. And finally, at the end of the book, I make a surprise kind of exit. I'm not going to reveal what it was.
How do you handle, I've seen movies where the bombing runs, you've got so many of these to make and then you can go home.
Right. Yeah.
And they're counting them off and then the stuff gets
Well,
in there that you don't want to do that
we didn't
because
have
there's...
that. We had days. You do your tour of duty. Your tour of duty is 365 days. We
do
get
you
a
count
calendar.
them off?
Absolutely. We get a calendar. It's a piece of paper. Usually it's got a girl on there, but it's like a paint by numbers. 365, once you pass that 365, you blacken it in. The next day is 364, you blacken it in. When the girl turns all black, you've done your 365 days, the girl is now all black, you keep your calendar. Some people would have you see their helmet with the little slashes on there, and usually a peace sign at the end. They wanted to go home. And then people will say, okay, Joliff, take point. And you'd say, screw you, Sarge, I'm short. That means I've only got like 30 days left. I'm not taking point. That's the guy that hits the booby traps. Usually they take the new guys, they put them on point. The guys most likely to get killed, the guys you don't really know. They're a replacement, they showed up a couple of days before. Put him on point, let him learn. It's his initiation. The old timers don't want to be anywhere near they're going to get killed. They're already thinking they're going home. They've lasted like, 9, 10, 11 months. They're not going to take a chance.
So they do actually keep track, eh?
Oh yeah, every single day. You're almost, every firefight is saying, okay, that's one firefight closer to home. I'm getting lower and lower. By the end of the tour, you're like a turtle. You get your butt down low.
Some of them thought that was bad omen to count because you didn't want to have to face that last flight. If you made it that far, you didn't want to face that last flight because it...
But people know that you're short. They know you're short. The lieutenants and the sergeants, they like you. You're one of their guys. Mm-hmm. They're not going to put you in a place where you're going to get hurt. And a lot of guys would pull out some kind of a medical thing on their last mission. They, all of a sudden they had the bad toe or the bad finger, or they couldn't see out of one ear. Hey, Sarge, I can't piss out of my left ear. All right, go to go to the
Sick bay.
sick bay. You know, you're friends. The lieutenant's not gonna hurt you. You know, you saved his life a couple of times and vice versa, right? You wouldn't put your buddy in a place where he's gonna get hurt. All right, Joliff, go on sick
Is
call.
everybody buddy? I mean,
Absolutely, absolutely. You would throw yourself on a grenade for any one of those guys. Absolutely, I would do it all over today, in a heartbeat. You know, what the heck? If
Have you
you're gonna
seen
get
the
killed, you
movie-
might as well do it in a good way, right?
Have you seen the movie Platoon?
Many times.
Is it like that?
Yeah, but they condense it, you know, it's not like that every time. In the movie Platoon, you think everything is a search and destroy and the goops are coming. There's a lot of times where it's just like boring.
Yeah.
It's either very,
This is very concentrated.
it's exactly, it's either boring or it's sheer terror. You know, the old joke about, you know, hurry up and wait. You know, rush, 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 we're gonna make contact, but it's one, you sit and you wait for, you know, for the 3 days, nothing happens, and then the choppers or the trucks come and pick you up. So there's a lot of fun stuff down. When I talked to publishers, one of them was a mercenary press. This is like about 15 years ago. He says, we love your book, we want to publish it, but we want you to delete all the downtime, all the non-combat related stuff. Get rid of it. We want action, action, action. Well, a third of the book is the downtime. What happens in the barracks, what you do when you go on leave, all the fun stuff and the mayhem that GIs can create just to entertain themselves. So I told the publisher, I says, I can't do that. It'd be like me getting rid of one of my kids. Kind of a Sophie's choice. So I chose not to be published at that time. I felt if I kept knocking on doors, eventually somebody would want the book as it was.
I would imagine the movie script will want to do that too.
They want the up and down, the roller coaster thing. It's not, if Platoon was always combat, 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 it wouldn't be good. But there's a lot of fun stuff, you know, they're sitting in the barracks, they're smoking dope, they're doing pranks on each other. There's a lot of that stuff going on.
Was there a lot of dope?
Not so much with the infantry guys. The rear echelon guys had the mamazans and the goop, the little houseboys would come during the camp, during the day to make the beds or shine the shoes or do the laundry, and they could bring in dope in and out of the base. But the infantry guys, we never really had a base. We were like choppers. We were airborne here, there, always never in one place very long. Plus, if you know you're gonna go out the next day, you really don't want to go high.
Yeah.
Because if you're caught high on guard duty, your platoon is gonna turn on you. So there was some dopes mostly for the rear echelon people. Because if I'm sitting in the same place for like a year, you know, doing the same thing every day, I'm gonna entertain myself. I'm gonna do whatever is there to pass the time. But infantry guys, not so much.
What's it like sitting in a helicopter?
I love it. Love it.
And you can hear the ground fire and bullets.
Love it, love it,
piercing
love it,
through the-
love it, love it. The adrenaline, it's like the best ride you've ever been on at an amusement park. Because you're coming in and the front choppers are strafing the ground, you know, with their and there's smoke. You know, the first or two choppers, they're putting the smoke out there so that you come in a screen of smoke. And the vortex of the blades is making all the stuff flying around, and the tracer rounds are going in, the tracer rounds are coming out, and you know, the rockets and all this stuff. It's just amazing. It's just beautiful. And the ground is green, but then there's got all these holes pockmarked from, you know, bombs and
Yeah.
things. So it's gorgeous. I mean, it's a beautiful country. But then bomb craters are everywhere. So I love chopper rides. Hot LZ, we call them, hot landing zones. We're coming in, where the adrenaline's pumping, you just want to get at them.
Even with fire ripping through the...
Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Can't get enough of that. Because we're putting way more firepower out there than they have. You know, a little AK-47 versus an M60, who's going to win? You know, we got like way more. And mostly, we know which zones are going to be firing at us and which are not. And they've been prepared. They've been mortared. The artillery's been, you know. We don't go in cold. We go in where they're going to be kind of like hiding in their bunkers when we come in.
When they drop you off like that, I'd imagine some of them don't even land. You
No,
get
they
dropped
don't.
off before
They don't.
they
It's
land.
kind of cool. I kind
Because
of like
it's-
that.
Could
Yeah.
be water?
It is, it's rice paddies
Yeah,
and elephant grass.
yeah.
So
yeah.
you really don't know when you jump out of that thing, you don't know
Where
how
you're
deep
going.
you're going in. So it's kinda cool, sometimes you're stuck, and sometimes you hit the ground before you think you're gonna hit the ground. It's kind of a weird, kind of a,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But as soon as you hit the ground, you're running, you're spreading, you're just like, either you're on your belly firing, or you're, you know, making an arc and setting up a defense position.
now how long would you typically be there?
As soon
before
as the
they
whole
come and get
platoon,
you?
as soon as the platoon is down, and the lieutenant and his RTO, his radio telephone operator, says, okay, we're here, you know, and this is, we're facing this, and headquarters says, okay, fan out, and let's go get them, search and destroy. So we usually go where the fire has been coming, and we, you know, we pepper them a little bit, and then when things are quiet, we go in there and count the bodies. So everybody says, oh, you're in Vietnam, did you kill anybody? That's the first question they want to know. Especially because I taught American history at high school kids. Did you kill anybody? And my answer wasn't going to be like John Wayne. You don't see a guy on top of a hill, and then you squeeze off around and you see him drop. That's Hollywood. What we saw is like bushes moving, a little smoke, some fire flash, and everybody opens up on full automatic. So when they ask me, did you kill anybody? I says, I don't know. You know, we go in there, we count bodies, we report that. We don't know who got who. So I feel good about that.
Books don't have your name on it, so you can't tell.
You know, I don't have to feel like I've killed anybody. I know I've healed a lot of people, so I don't have that post-traumatic stress disorder that they're talking about. Because a lot of guys, they carry baggage.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? If I had tortured a person or put a bayonet through a person, you know, maybe I would feel bad, because in every movie, you kill the guy and then you go through his wallet for intelligence, to gather information, and you see a picture of his wife and his kids. Well, that's got to be kind of a heavy baggage to carry the rest of your life, because now he's no longer a gook, so he's a human like you. You know what I mean? They weren't human to us, because all through basic, it was, you know, we had dummies, and we had to practice bayonet practice. Kill a commie for mommy. Kill a commie for mommy. So if I saw, you know, what we call slopeheads, gooks, dinks, rice eaters, they were communists. And there was times where they weren't communists, they were civilians, and we had made a mistake. So we would just take the ID card and just rip it up and report them as a Viet Cong. It's kind of sad, that's collateral
I
damage.
just saw a DVD that, and I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it initially, and there was some big muckety-muck general or something talking in front of a group, and they showed some pictures, and one was a medic in, it might have been Kabul, maybe somewhere within 5 miles of Iraq, downtown. Smoke in the background, and jeeps and stuff were coming, and he was carrying this soldier, and they were making a big deal of this medic carrying the soldier. Well, some of the men around him were making fun of him because it wasn't an American soldier.
Yeah, he had carried one of the...
What are you doing carrying
Yeah.
the enemy? He
Yeah.
said, my job is
Yeah.
not to identify the enemy, it's to identify a wounded person.
Right,
And that's why I'm carrying him.
right.
Can you say that
No,
is the kind
because...
of way you people thought, is that
Well,
you
see-
were there for injured, not for
We weren't
specific
fighting in
soldiers?
cities. We weren't fighting in cities where we're gonna find civilians. We're like in the
Well,
bushes, we're
okay,
walking into
okay,
ambushes.
okay.
So that kind of eliminated that kind of like maybe.
Yeah,
To us, they were like 99% they were Viet Cong. We had a curfew. After 7 o'clock at night, it was free fire. If something moved, we didn't have to identify it. We had to kill it. And that went out till 7 in the morning. Between 7 at night and 7 in the morning, anything moving at night was Charlie. You know, we said that the day belongs to the GI, but the night times belongs to Charlie. That's when they move, that's when they set you up. So at 7:01, we could kill a person, and 99% of the time we could assume it was a Viet Cong, an NVA, North Vietnam regular. If they had an ID card, we made a mistake. Oops. Well, the ID card would disappear. But they knew
Well,
that
everybody
after
knew.
curfew you had to
Everybody
be in.
knew you
You
had to
don't
be
move
in.
after, at 7 o'clock, you've got to be in your little house.
Mhm.
So,
So,
I would have treated, you know, if we had a guy and, you know, he had been beat up, I probably would have patched him up just long enough so he could be interrogated by our intelligence officer back in the base camp.
did you ever meet up with the enemy in any way so you could?
Many
Okay,
times.
what was
I
that
spoke
like?
French. My parents are French. My
What was
mother's-
that like?
I spoke French, so anybody that was like over 30, 35, 40, they would say, Doc, come over here and translate for us. You know, so we had guys that, you know, I got intelligence out of. I was the only guy in the platoon that spoke French.
How does French relate to
Well,
Vietnamese?
you know, Indochina was a French colony before we went over there, remember? Bien Phu and all that stuff. Anybody over 35, 40 spoke French. They had been educated by the French. I mean, the French owned that place and made a rubber plantation out of the whole country. So, I got kind of lucky.
Yeah,
Because I could turn a mission into whatever I wanted to. Because sometimes we had what they call the Tiger Scout, like a Vietnamese interpreter. Sometimes we didn't. So when we got into a village, they would say, Doc, ask Papazan what's going on. Have you seen Viet Congs? And where are they? And I would do the translating, and I could make it go either way. You know, the lieutenant didn't know what the guy was telling me.
yeah,
He knew what I told him.
yeah.
So that came in handy a couple of times.
Could you tell the difference between a civilian and a
Yes,
Kong?
yes.
How?
It's an attitude, it's kind of almost a smell, it's what they're wearing, it's just, we just knew, you know, and you look at their bodies, if they're all scarred up, they're a combat guy. I mean, because a lot of those guys, their scars did not heal very good. They had no penicillin, they had no medicine. I mean, you're walking through the jungle all the time, you get cuts get infected. So if we saw a guy, you know, they're wearing black pajamas, that's the Viet Congs, they're wearing black pajamas, and, you know, we take their shirts off, and they're, you know, they got bullet wounds, they got scars. He's not a farmer. You know, this guy's not working in a rice paddy behind a water buffalo. You know, and a certain age too. I mean, if they're over 35, 40, we're going to assume he's a regular Papazan, regular good Joe, you know. Plus, you could tell how they communicate with us. I mean, there's usually in anger, they're snarling at you. They don't want to talk to you if they're the bad guys. You know, but you got to assume that they're bad guys. So sometimes we treated guys kind of harshly, and we made mistakes.
Yeah,
It's not a black and white thing. That's what this book is about.
yeah.
There's a lot of gray areas where you're not trained to do what you're going to be
But
doing.
even
I deliver a
civilian-
kid in this book. You know, I
Even
get into-
civilians can be sympathizers.
Yes.
Not being in it,
Many,
but
many,
sympathizers
many
and
times.
hiding. And,
Yes, civilians don't give you the 100% truth.
Yeah,
They're gonna tweak it. So
that's gotta,
we kind of went in blindsided, and we, you know, with one arm tied behind our back, and
yeah.
we weren't given the proper intelligence. So we kind of faked it, and we faked it till we make it.
That's gotta change your psyche to a certain degree of, this is how I need to behave in order to survive. What's it like trying to
When I was there,
get out of that?
General Westmoreland was in charge when I got there in January of '68, which is right after the Tet Offensive. His attitude was body count, body count, body count, body count. We have to make a report every night to the 6 o'clock news. We lost so many soldiers, but we killed like 10 times more. Body count, body count, body count. We dug up fresh graves to claim bodies sometimes. You know, we did whatever we had to do. The lieutenant wanted to become a first lieutenant. He wanted to become a, you know, move up the ranks. He wanted to become a captain. So he had, the more body counts to report, the better you look. Well, somewhere during my tour of duty, General Abrams became in charge. His attitude was, wins the hearts and minds of the people. You know, let's go in there, and when you get into a village, I'm a medic, I'm gonna pass out aspirins, I'm gonna do a fake medical exam. You know, all I had is a stethoscope and a bag full of, you know, morphine, Darvon, and aspirins, and bandages, and so we gotta make them feel like they're part of America, you know, the Coca-Cola and all the good stuff. So it was a different attitude. The body counts were not as important. And we didn't make as much contact towards my end of duty. It was mostly booby traps rather than firefights. So things kind of change, and you're not prepared. You don't know what's going to happen.
Why did they change?
Well, from Westmoreland's attitude to Abrams' attitude. Like now we have General Petraeus over there, you know, in Afghanistan. So, and they all have different attitude. His attitude is shock and awe, and let's make, you know, the people feel like they're running their own country. So, you don't know, you know, the old joke was, this shit rolls downhill.